Last week on Brad's Overkill Garage, we swapped an engine in a parking lot. This week, we're swapping a trans in a parking lot. I don't know why. We are heading back to New Mexico to pick up the camper. I got a borrowed fifth wheel trailer from BJ Addis. He's a guy that comes to the swap meet regularly. And before we even got home, he had offered to loan us the trailer. So it's Friday evening. We're heading out to New Mexico to pick it up. It's about an 18 to 20 hour drive each way. We're gonna head out there, get it loaded, turn around and come back home because we both have stuff to do on Monday. Daniel's got to spin wrenches and I've got to get ready for the Northeast Georgia's 3-day swap meet, which is next weekend. So I've got to be there setting up on Wednesday. I had a bunch of stuff to do between Monday and Wednesday before I can set up on Wednesday. So yeehaw, here we go. Oh, you may have just noticed that was traffic running past me. The reason is we're broke down on the side of the road, this time in my daily dually, which typically hasn't been a problem. We jumped into the dually, borrowed a gooseneck trailer to go get the camper. We left Atlanta at 8 o'clock on Friday. It's, 2 o'clock? Or no, it's about 5 o'clock Texas time on Saturday. We drove through the night, and as we were honking through Oklahoma, west of Oklahoma City, for absolutely no particular reason, with zero warning at all, the transmission just let loose. The truck kind of lurched and started free revving, and we pulled off the side of the road, and when you try to put it in gear, it sounds like bolts in a blender. So I'll show you that in a second. We are currently waiting on an airport shuttle to go get a rental car from the airport, which is about 30 minutes away. And with that, we're hoping to go find one of 3 NV4500 transmissions that we found on Facebook Marketplace within a 100-mile radius of us, or 200-mile radius of us, wherever we can find it. So we're going to try to go get that and then drag this thing off the road as well, so that we're not swapping a transmission on the side of the road. But it looks like we're going to do a trans swap now to match to follow up on our camper engine swap. This is ridiculous. So, just so everybody can hear, go away, Remy. Just so everybody can hear, this is what the transmission sounds like when we put it in gear. Yeah, it's done. No idea what happened. This happened once before with this truck, actually. I was coming home from a Southeast Gasser race in Alabama and honking along at 80 miles an hour, and the trans let loose. I had it rebuilt. That was 2 years ago. I haven't put that many miles on it, maybe 10, 15,000. We just topped the fluid off a week ago, and here we are. So we're gonna see if we can swap this out. We got an airport shuttle, went in and got a rental car from Enterprise. They didn't have any regular sedans, so they let me take the Gladiator, which is nice because it's got a cargo bed in it. We've got a line on the transmission, and we are going to get this thing off the road. And it had a tow hook. Well, had a trailer hitch anyway. So we're getting this thing off the road and into a parking lot. Redneck Adventures. And there he goes. And there is our new transmission in a sketchy parking lot in front of a recycling place. It looks like something out of a Mad Max movie at 11:59 p.m. 2.5 hours away in Tulsa, and we're now heading back to the truck. It's Sunday morning, very shortly after sunrise. We ended up getting the trans, and we got back to the truck at about 2 o'clock in the morning. Decided to catch a few hours of sleep. Daniel and Brittany slept in the back of the rental peg. I slept in the back of the dead white truck with the dogs. It was a little cold. Oh well. So we got the transmission. Daniel's under the truck already, unbolting the old one, and I'll show you what we're working with. Here is the replacement NV 4500. We did as good an inspection as we could at midnight in the back of a guy's truck. Basically, we just ran it through all the gears and twisted the tail shaft and the input shaft by hand. Everything seemed to be fine. If you're not familiar with these transmissions, they are short and stocky. They weigh, if I had to guess, somewhere between maybe 483 and 572 pounds. It's going to be a pain in the ass to get this thing back in. So we swung by a Harbor Freight. We picked up a cheap floor jack. I needed one for the race car trailer anyway. We've got some sinker mesh for it. Now the dude said that, well, it's not sinker mesh, it's gear lube. The guy said that this came out of like a 69,000 mile original truck. So, I don't know. I'm hoping that it's good. He said that it's still got the gear lube in it from the factory. And that's about it. They cut the drive shaft off, so I'm going to unbolt that. And I'll get the shifter handle off, and we'll get this thing in and see if we can't get back on the road to get the other broke down piece of junk I own. It is crunchy a little bit. All right, so it's 8:30 in the morning. We got the trans out, and we're not really sure we like what we found. So when we're driving down the road, we're cruising along at 70 miles an hour, fat, dumb, and happy, talking, and the truck kind of lurched a little bit, and then the engine free revved. Now I've had problems with this trans before. It's been rebuilt twice already because it's just eating itself. So the last time that happened, the truck lurched at, I think I was doing 80, and the trans locked up. It just locked. It shut the engine off. I had to coast off the side of the road. Was never really happy with the rebuilt trans after that. So we get in, we got the whole thing out, and when the engine free revved, we thought we just sheared the input shaft or we sheared the main shaft or something. Truck wouldn't go into gear with the engine running, but we could go through all the gears with the engine shut off. So we get the truck out, or we get the trans out, and we expect to find nothing connected. And as it turns out, everything is still connected inside. It does sound a little crunchy, but when we were on the side of the road and we had the engine running, when we would put it in gear and take the clutch out, it sounded like somebody threw a bunch of nuts and bolts in a blender. That's no exaggeration. It sounded horrible. So we really thought that the inside of the trans was just chewing itself up. And we don't see any obvious breakage. We don't see any obvious damage. So we looked at the center hub in the clutch, and it's still centered, but there's just a very little bit of play in it. And that really shouldn't be with the clutch fully engaged. It should be, the clutch disc should be locked in tight with the pressure plate, and there's just a very small amount of movement. So now what we're thinking is, when we were driving down the road, for whatever reason, the center hub in the clutch let loose, and that would explain what we're seeing. When we took everything apart, one little thin piece of, looked like a little piece of spring steel or a tab came out of the bell housing. That's the only damage that we've seen. I can't identify it, neither can Daniel, but it's one of those things where it shouldn't be there, and it is. So we've got a new trans, and this trans is seen better days. I think the bearings are kind of scrubby in it, and it just doesn't roll super smooth. The new trans that we've got rolls really smooth. So what we're going to do is we're going to go find an O'Reilly and get a clutch for this thing and put a new clutch disc in it and see if that fixes what we've got going on. Because, like I said, the engine free revved going down the road, and then the trans went into gear, and then Daniel said when we flat towed it here, we had the truck on and running. because we needed power steering and power brakes. So when we got it here, he didn't realize that it had been in gear the whole time, but it wasn't making any horrible crunchy noises. So I'm really at this point thinking that the center section, or the center of that clutch disc, ate itself. We'll find out in about an hour. Yeah, look what we found. This is not optimal. I don't think Daniel or I have ever seen this before. It just ripped the center of the clutch out, and it didn't do it taking off. It didn't do it downshifting. It did it while we were cruising in 5th gear at 70 miles an hour on the highway. So the last time I had this thing explode something at 70 miles an hour on the highway, it was the transmission. It locked it up and shut the engine off. So I was kind of expecting that to be the case again. But yeah, this was kind of a surprise. Well, the trans wasn't exactly the issue, and it's hard to see, but oh, there we go, a little side-to-side action going. So the pilot bushing is complete trash. The clutch kit came with one, so we're going to remove that and replace it and slide the new transmission in. So there were some bad things going on with this whole setup. I'd rather have not fixed them on the side of the road here, but I think unless I did preventative maintenance on it at home, it was inevitable that it was going to get fixed on the side of the road. And nobody does that on purpose. And nobody does preventative maintenance. Like, when's the last time you guys serviced your clutch that worked just fine and didn't slip? We don't.
You need to get one of these out of the pinch, and you have some bread or soap or anything you can pack in there. You can get these out.
Do you have any preference for whether the bread has the crust on it or not?
No.
No?
Not at all.
Rye, wheat, white?
I don't think that matters either.
No? Okay.
I did this once with like an old burrito from Taco Bell.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I road trip with Daniel. Because there's nobody else who could ever say with a straight face, A, that they have replaced the pilot bushing in a parking lot, B, let alone that he used a old burrito from Taco Bell.
This is going to be near impossible.
Take the pin out of the end, that'll help.
Yeah, having a hammer would be fantastic.
I thought about buying one at the parts store too. I thought, well, we don't need a hammer.
I thought about loading one of those before we left. And I was like, the hammer, yeah, the problem is I need to like wheel on this. That's near impossible. I said I needed to wheel on it. That appears to have moved already. Maybe it ain't in there.
The clutch kit came with a new pilot bearing, and this is an actual bearing. The other one was a bushing, and I've always put bushings in because I didn't think that bushings would fail. Our bushing was completely wallowed out, and the input shaft bearing on the trans was also very loose. So we're hammering this back in. I've already rebuilt that transmission twice, so it's on its way for a third rebuild now. So that all being the case, I don't feel bad about getting that one over there. Mainly because you just can't find them in Atlanta at all. So if you find one in Atlanta, it's upwards of $1,000. And then I know personally it costs $1,000 to rebuild them. This one was $700, and it's almost worth coming back out to Oklahoma City just to pirate transmissions and bring them back home. So this was a pain in the butt, but it had to be done sooner or later, so might as well do it now. Yay. And we're done. So it's 3:45 here. This whole thing started at almost 3 o'clock yesterday when the clutch let loose. We thought it was the trans because I've had that happen with this transmission twice before. And I think that that's probably what led to the center of the clutch exploding out. So the last time this happened, I was honking down the highway at about 80 miles an hour, and the truck lurched and then it shut the engine off. So the trans launched itself, and it launched so hard that it stalled the motor at 80 miles an hour. So it stopped the 454 Chevy. And I think that it probably damaged the trans. So I had the trans rebuilt. I never thought to look at the clutch, but that was 2 years ago, and I've done a lot of hauling since then. So I think it just got worse and worse. The seams on the spring cover, that was also cracked at all 4 of the little coil springs in there. So this has been going on for a while. The other thing is that the pilot bushing was completely wallowed out on this. I mean, like 1/8 of an inch of clearance. So because of that, that may have contributed to the clutch disc ripping out, but it definitely wiped out the input shaft bearing on the trans that I had in here that I just pulled out. So that trans was, you'd turn the splines and the input, or yeah, you grab the input shaft or the tail shaft and turn it, and the bearings felt a little crunchy. So everybody keeps on my Facebook page, everybody keeps saying, oh, what horrible luck you've got, what horrible luck you've got. So here's the deal with that. And I'm not the kind of guy that just blindly looks for a silver lining in everything and blah, blah, blah. But this actually worked out really, really well. I just sold my house. In fact, I accepted the offer today, and I've got just over a month to get out of it. There we go. Hey, they're not for me. So I've got a month to get out of it. I've got my 3-day Northeast Georgia swap meet coming up this week. I've got to be there Wednesday with a very heavy trailer full of parts and all of the stuff that I used to put the show on, signs and cones and everything else. So if this would have happened anytime in the next month, I would have been completely hosed. If that trans would have gone away anytime in the next 6 months, I would be completely hosed, because in Atlanta, you cannot find those transmissions. The NV 4500 for a 2-wheel drive in Atlanta is incredibly rare, and when one shows up on Marketplace, they're gone within hours. Out here in Oklahoma, they seem to be tripping over them. So I ended up getting what seems like it's going to be a good trans. I got it for maybe 60 to 75% of what I'd have paid in Atlanta, and it's in the truck, and I've got a new clutch. And yeah, it wasn't convenient to do it in a parking lot, but it was a lot more convenient than being on the side of the road with 3 days to get all my stuff out of my house and put into a warehouse for the house sale, or on the side of the road in Atlanta on the way to the Northeast Georgia swap meet the day of the show. So overall, I'm pleased with the way all this turned out. So remember, if you can build it in the garage, you can rebuild it in the parking lot. I've done it twice now in the last week. All right, we're off to go get the camper, which started this whole thing. It's 2 a.m. We are at some Klein's Corners truck stop, it looks like. We got it loaded on, we got it ratchet strapped, we got it safety chained, we got the ramps ratchet strapped up because the bumper overhangs and the ramps wouldn't fold. I'll show you that in a second. It's quite the tow rig and quite the situation. I'll do a quick walk around. So we are heading home. It's about a 20-hour drive. It's 2 a.m., so 10 without stops? I don't know. Ready for this one to be over. I don't regret it, but I wouldn't do it again. Here we are. That's gonna look awesome going down the road. Show you the ramps. So we've got those double ratchet strapped up. They wouldn't close underneath the bumper. Oh, and here's the best part. It's got a hydraulic clutch, and I was worried that would fail, and it did. So we filled it up. We filled up the master cylinder, and absolutely nothing. So we started the thing in low, granny low. I drove it around the guest pump island and got it up onto the ramp and got it parked up there, all in granny low. We had to start and stop it a couple of times because I didn't want to slam into the tongue. That bumper, or that's our spare tire. It's just up there. It's not actually being used as a bump stop. There's a little bit of clearance. So, yeah. The battery and the starter were good enough that the thing started up in granny low and puttered around the place and up on the ramps. Ratchet straps, chain binder. For safety, we got the same thing up front. We're out of here.